This is a Louie Tee Network exclusive.
For those of you who don't know, I'm Louie Tee, host of the Louie Tee Network, and this is One Burning Question, a series that will take a look at all 32 teams in the National Football League and pose a question. Some teams will have micro questions where we look at the team in its current state and talk about what could potentially happen for them in this season, and some will take a macro approach where we kind of open up the lens a bit and take a step back and look at it from a wide view look and perspective and talk about where these franchises might be going in the future, not just this season, but moving forward. So I'll take a look at each and every single team, ask a burning question, answer that question, and move on to the next team. Thank you for joining me. Enjoy One Burning Question. Welcome to this In the Lab Room exclusive series, One Burning Question. I, of course, as always, am your host, Louie Tee. Thank you for joining me on this program, as today we'll be talking about the Detroit Lions. And what a tumultuous season it's been, full of ups and downs. This team started off the season 0-6, had an ugly loss over in London, and changes were made. They fired their offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, a couple of offensive line coaches, and fired their general manager, Martin Mayhew, and Tom Lawan, team president. And they started to show the signs of a team that was ready to just totally rebuild this thing. We started hearing questions about Matthew Stafford and would he be back, and it looked like they were heading for a total rebuild in Detroit. But now, a couple of wins later, Jim Caldwell has seemed to have steadied the ship, but if they don't finish this season strongly, more change could be on the horizon for this team. Let's talk about the one burning question for this Detroit Lions organization as they continue to try to right some of the wrongs that have been put in place this season and see if they can't finish this season that had a really rocky start to it on a high note. Can the Lions find the right GM to come into the organization and instill a philosophy and a model of consistency that can sustain itself in Detroit? One of my biggest problems with the Detroit Lions over the last decade is their inability to sustain any type of success. Now, the running joke in Detroit is the next general manager's initials can't be M&M. Okay, Matt Millen, and of course Martin Mayhew. So no M's in Detroit and you'll be just fine. But seriously, all jokes aside, this is an organization that hasn't been able to sustain anything of note. They've had flashes. There was one season, and I want to say it was 3-4 years ago. They win the division, or they make the postseason. They did not win the division. But they go on the road, they lose to New Orleans, but you felt good about that season. You said, hey, this team is building something, they're heading in the right direction. And the wheels fall off totally the next season. They fire their head coach and they move in a totally different direction. And I thought that was necessary. They had already had this identity that they had carved out for themselves as a very undisciplined football team. And, you know, we had Ndamukong Suh stepping on guys. It just was a bad situation in Detroit. In comes Jim Caldwell, and he's looking to turn things around. He does so in his first season. The team makes the postseason. Golden Tate comes in. He's all world. You got him next to Calvin Johnson. And you're feeling good about the prospects of this football team. Defensively, they're one of the best in the league, and they're shutting teams down. You just miss a home playoff game, so you go on the road to Dallas. It doesn't go the way you intended to. You lose the game, a couple of controversial calls in the mix, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. You look to rebound next season, come back, do it again, and build off of what you were able to do the season before. Instead, they go in the opposite direction. The wheels fall off once again, and it's the inconsistency that kills me with this Detroit Lions football team. So now I ask the question, you got a new general manager coming in the upcoming offseason. You're going to find someone that you're going to give that title to, and they're going to be in charge of turning this thing around in Detroit, because I think you have talent on this roster. I don't think this is a team void of talented football players per se, but some of the selections are questionable. You know, this offensive line isn't where it needs to be, and you could argue it's injuries, but the depth was tested this season, and the Lions failed miserably. Okay, when you start having injuries, you start to find out just how good of a job your general manager has been doing over the long haul, and it really came to fruition, and it was shown on a much larger scale that Martin Mayhew simply failed this team when it was all said and done. Didn't have enough depth on the offensive line. You let Ndamukong Suh walk. So did Nick Fairley, which I thought was a mistake. You needed to keep one of the two. Suh's price was outrageous, but Nick Fairley should have been back in Detroit. Felt like there was a reason to keep him around. You go out and get Haloti Ngata. He wasn't healthy at the beginning of the season. He's getting healthier now, but still think you've had some issues defensively. The team hasn't been as good defensively as it has been in the past. And some of that could be due to DeAndre L.A.B being out for basically the entire season, but offensively, there were some struggles. Joe Lombardi, he did a good job last year, but he didn't do a good job this season. I think he was in over his head, didn't make the necessary adjustments. Okay, so the offensive line is struggling. Find ways to combat that. Screens and delays and things of that nature. Getting the football out of Matthew Stafford's hands quicker would all help those things, and they just didn't do that. And so maybe sticking with the run a little bit more. Hard to run behind the line the way that it was playing earlier in the season. So a number of questions, not enough answers. So now my question is, can you find the right guy? That's what it's all about. Getting the right guy that's going to come in and have a philosophy. It seems like the Lions have been getting general managers that have just been picking players, not necessarily having a plan and a direction in mind, but just, hey, that guy's the most talented, so we're going to take him at number 10. I didn't feel like you needed Eric Ebron. I didn't think that was a luxury that you possessed. Thought you still needed to invest in the offensive line. You got Matthew Stafford. You got Calvin Johnson. You got all these skill guys that can get it done. But if Matthew Stafford can't get them the football and doesn't have the adequate time to survey the field and spread it around, then what good is it to have Eric Ebron or a Calvin Johnson or Golden Tate or any of these players for that matter? You know, Corey Fuller. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you don't have protection up front, he's not getting the football to any of them. So, didn't really feel like that was a luxury that you had, but you made the pick, and that was the pick. I wasn't a fan of it, but okay, you did it. It's done. And so, you look at this Lions organization, and general manager, I think, is where it starts for this football team and this organization moving forward. If you can find the right guy with the right vision for this team moving forward, and I don't see them blowing things up, and I hope that the Lions don't go into a tailspin at the end of the season, because if they do, Jim Caldwell may not be safe. And I thought after, 11 weeks of football, he had turned things around, and after that blowout victory over the Eagles on Thanksgiving, I said he's safe. But if they go out, they gut punch to the Green Bay Packers 2 weeks ago, that stings. And if they continue to play the way that they played against the St. Louis Rams, a team that had lost 5 consecutive games, and you let them beat you, if you can continue to play that kind of football to finish up the season, and you lose the remaining 3 games and go on a 5-game skid to finish up, he may not be safe and he may be out. And you know how it goes. When you got a new team president and a new general manager, they want to bring their own guys in. So maybe Caldwell gets a year, and if they don't like what he does and they don't like the direction of the team, he'll probably be gone anyhow. But at least he'll get an opportunity, and that's what I want to see happen for Jim Caldwell. It's frustrating that he's only in year 2 and we're talking about this man and his job security, but that's the way the NFL is set up now. It's a results-based league, and it's a what have you done for me lately league. Sort of like Janet Jackson. What have you done for me lately? Do, do, do. and he didn't win 11 games or 10 games, and he didn't make the postseason, and they struggled this season, so he could be on the hook. But you need a general manager to come in, pick the right players, get the right groceries, so that when you start cooking the meal, all you need is a spice here, a little seasoning there, and all of a sudden the Lions are back in postseason contention once again. So I'll read the question again to wrap this up. Can the Lions find the right GM to come into the organization and instill a philosophy and a model of consistency that can sustain itself in Detroit? You need a GM. He needs to have a philosophy already in mind before getting the job. He needs to lay out the blueprint for how he's going to turn this organization around, and not only turn it around in the short term, but have that plan be able to sustain itself moving forward. That's been my biggest gripe with this Lions organization for the last decade is guys don't sustain the success from one year to the next. They don't build off of the things they were able to do the year before. It seems like they start over on a blank canvas each and every single season. And if you are a successful organization in this league, every year is a blank canvas, but the organization itself is not. And you should be building off of some of the things you've been able to do in the past to help you get over some obstacles and hurdles in the future. Lions have not done a good job of doing that, and it starts with their general manager. That's the one burning question for the Detroit Lions. I'm your host, Louie Tee. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.